So we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on day 2 of Distributed 2022. My name is Stephanie Solomon. I am a content marketer here at Miro, and I'll be moderating today. So today you've joined us. In case you don't know where you are, we're talking about a very cool topic on how to use qualitative research to increase local government participation and why civic engagement is so important in your local neighborhood. And I'm super excited to introduce Terrell Barron, who is the content review specialist and founder of Snap Inc. and the Barron Review. He's a human experience designer and researcher investigating holistic solutions for communal equity. His work is in service to local communities, fighting for their involvement in design, infrastructure, and public policy decisions around the globe. Wow. So I'm going to hand it over to Terrell, and he's going to take it away and host our great session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that amazing introduction. And I am super excited to be giving this presentation today at Miro. Like she said, my name is Terrell Barron. I'm a human experience designer. I work at Snapchat as a content review specialist, and I'm the founder of the Barron Review, or TBR. And we're really just fighting to make local community members a part of design, infrastructure, and policy decisions. And one of the great ways to do that is through using Miro and civic engagement, because civic engagement is so crucial to a lot of the systems and opportunities that, afford us our daily lives. We use the buses, we go to grocery stores, civic systems, and really relying on our neighbors and community to give us that boost in the day. So I am going to get straight into this session, and we will go over into how we're actually using qualitative research to increase participation with our local governments. Share my screen. We have now entered the matrix. And for people still coming on in, how are you? We're going to get right into this presentation. Cool. So like I said before, you know the name. My name is Terrell Barron, and my superpower is being able to envision the current state and future desired state of any system, experience, product, or service. How I do that is using design and systems thinking principles to really investigate those behaviors that impact perception of said product, tools, and services. So that's a real focus on people, why they do the things, and what systems and behaviors are impacting how they perceive different services, topics, etc. Alrighty, so one of the statements that I live by on a daily basis: people don't want to be design decisions, they want to be stakeholders. And that is so important, because you always want to equip citizens with toolkits to tackle systemic failures and repair social connections, making your local community members stakeholders in any decision that's being taken, from designing a new street to putting in a new stop sign on the corner of a block, increases that accountability so that they know what's happening every step of the way, and that information and that transparency is there. That communication is very crucial to getting fast results. And sometimes not all the results are fast, but if you're working with your community to really understand their pain points, their needs, their wants, their values, and motives, then it creates a process that's way more symbiotic and give and take, rather than, observatory and then make a decision without them. They come, make a complaint, and then, you find yourself in a mess. So opening up that structure of research, so it's not just publicly funded or academically published, but you want to involve industry experts, you want to involve government, you want to involve civil society, you and I, in the process, so that it increases that communication, and way more ideas and mediation and facilitation becomes a natural part of our day-to-day activities. Why this is important? Honk honk. By 2040, 65% of the world's populations will live in cities. That is 65%. I don't think people understand how many people that is migrating to what we call cities today. But that's going to mean two things: a higher strain on city infrastructure and resources. Two, the need for stakeholders and organizations to co-create solutions to manage our urban informatics and civic engagements. Now, if you aren't familiar with urban informatics, that's essentially the data that we collect from cities and the data we collect from citizens within cities. So traffic data that goes into street data. There's a lot of different type of data that is collected in cities. And we really need to work with different organizations and the creation of new organizations to actually use this data to our advantage and leverage different systems so that it makes, an optimal day-to-day life for everyone. Now, we all know technology is great until it isn't. And, it's also known that technology isn't really the full solution. So it goes back to what we just said. We need to help existing organizations make sense of their current data and tools so that they can take the appropriate steps to build stronger trust with the communities they serve. And we all know trust is very important when it comes to creating any sort of solution so that, the communication is there. You're communicating with a similar jargon, similar language, instead of, it being not really a give and take relationship. Civic engagement, civic innovation, is in your backyard. So when it comes to cities, we're understanding our citizens, and local governments, educational institutions and other institutions, as well as infrastructures such as, our energy plants, as well as healthcare providers, they're all monitoring certain things from our users and, community members, our intents, our needs, our motives, our values, our behaviors, and of course, our pain points. And for their specific tools and services that they create, they leverage these different aspects of a citizen, i.e. their pain points, so that they can create a service or system or tool that, makes your life a bit easier. That's why we really believe user research and creative strategy is the bridge to reinforce those meaningful collaborations between local citizens, governments, and orgs. It's really sharing that knowledge of, all right, what is this community's needs? What are their motives for using this product or service? What are the values? What value do they actually get from that? And what are the behaviors that we can identify patterns and really create either new tools or systems, or we can actually just leverage existing tools and systems. Because every community's goal at its root is to offer its citizens a quality of life that's empowering, comfortable, and filled with choice. In this presentation specifically, we're going to focus on generative research. Generative research is essentially the initial step of developing a deeper understanding of citizens to uncover opportunities for solutions and innovations. And below, you can see some of the ways researchers, some of the methodologies we use: surveys, thematic analysis, data mining, ethnographies, field studies, and interviews. Again, you always want to create that quality of life that's comfortable and filled with choice. So generative research is super important because it galvanizes your team to actually get out there and learn and work with community members to understand how they feel about certain tools. What are their pain points? What is their day-to-day activities? What are the patterns that we can identify to, again, leverage these key points of intents, needs, motives, and values? So now we're going to move on to actual engagement. You hear bunch of times, the news, or read it somewhere on any social media site, but civic engagement is essentially activities to improve the daily lives of local community members through the pooling of knowledge, skills, and motivation. Now, in your community, this can look like voting, it can look like volunteering, you can even donate food at a food drive, or you can donate blood, but it also looks like attending city council or community meetings, or helping researchers for communal projects. It also looks like serving on a school board or PTA. Shout out to parents out there. We're going to be focusing on two aspects of this: community engaged research. So that means going to city council meetings and community meetings, as well as field education. And that means bringing in subject matter experts and going to different workshop sections and events so that your community members can actually learn more about the method behind the practice. Now, this presentation is again on Neighborhood Faces, and Neighborhood Faces is essentially a research group investigating ways to increase participation with local governments. Now, we have two objectives. Number one, we really want to increase the number of virtual and in-person attendees at city council, developer, and community relation meetings. Why that's super important? Again, more eyes, more visuals, more perspectives. That means more accountability can be shared and delegated throughout a community for every decision that is made. Number two is we really want to identify those systematic bottlenecks civic engagement leaders face so we can actually co-create strategies to optimize workflows. Now, why this is important? Because it goes back to our point about technology is great until it isn't. So optimizing workflows so that everyone can actually access these tools, everyone has the accountability so that they can make it to these sessions is very important to actually getting people to the table. And one of the ways that we actually tackled this was partnering with an amazing group. Their name is Mentor Me Collective, and they are led by CEO Chanel Power, and they're actually closing the Black wealth gap through personalized mentorship, corporate talent sourcing, and impactful community events. Now, we worked with them essentially to conduct a UXR Fellowship of 50 participants. So we had 50 fellows, and each of those fellows, we took them through the basics of user research course. Why this is important, it goes back to that field education aspect. It's taking people in our community, seeing that they're interested in user research, and we're actually having a class every 2 weeks and actually having neighborhood faces tasks as their homework. So they're understanding the major principles of user research, the methods behind it, and then they're taking that study into practice with neighborhood faces and going out into their community and doing that research of interviewing someone, transcribing that data, bringing it back to the team to synthesize that data. So it actually creates like a very direct line for study into actual practice. And why this is great is because as in a fellowship, you're looking to break into the tech field, you're looking to break into different fields. This is very great for someone's resume. It's very great to show that you're impactful no matter where you go. And it shows that you can actually put projects on your resume and portfolio that actually mean something to you and your community. And who doesn't want to really do that, right? So these are some of the screenshots we actually had from the event. As you can see, we're going over some user research methods, and here are some other photos we'll go into. But this is essentially the qualitative coding aspect of getting into these Miro boards and really working with people to show them how to do certain things, i.e. qualitative coding. Again, we used Hopin as well, so we can do it live and have comments and questions and really make it a engaging session. And we'll go into the neighborhood faces board in a bit. And this is actually the neighborhood faces board that we used. So this is all done in Miro. This is why Miro is so amazing, because it actually gives you a centralized place where you can store all of your data, all of your workflows, and all of your resources. So we broke this up into 4 different parts. You have your co-work section, we'll get into how we actually worked and synthesized some of our interview data. We have our library. So over here, you'll see top platforms to use, resources, our Google Drive, our timeline for like important dates, and then you have a task board. So like to do what you got to do, and you basically break a task board into 3 different topics or 3 different points. And these are some more examples of the neighborhood faces board. And like we were talking about for the task board, you have to do tasks. So what do we actually have to do? What are we doing? And then if it's done, just move it on over. So again, accountability and making things as simple as possible. Cool. Alrighty, so like I said before, our UXR fellows were amazing and they were super enthusiastic about getting some of this research done. We provided them with a research plan as well as an interview guide to really give them context and direction when conducting a lot of this research. So UXR fellows were tasked with conducting 1 or more interviews with a civic engagement stakeholder from the following occupations. We had civil servants, we had local citizens, we had students, and we had infrastructure leaders, as in urban planners, land use planners, and developers. Now, we're actually going to go into what qualitative coding is. But like I said before, we provided our fellows with a thorough research plan, giving them the why behind our actions, our methodologies, the steps that we're actually going to be taking, and a sample interview guide with questions so that they can actually frame out their interviews. And we actually, we engage with our stakeholders very well with doing this. And to cut down on transcription time, we use the speech to text app to transcribe our interviews, which is great. There are a lot of great ones out there. Dovetail, Instaminutes, these are super great so that you don't, have to take notes while you're interviewing. You can literally just, have a great third-party app, get it in there, and then transcribe it. So what is actual qualitative coding? Qualitative coding is a process of categorizing data in order to establish a framework of thematic ideas about it. That may sound like a lot, but it essentially means is you're going through your transcript and you're really just pinpointing out different major thematic ideas. And one of the ways that we did that, we color coded it. And Miro is great because, you know, it really allows you to really flex your creativity. And we color coded different aspects of data that we came across. So journey and timeline, if we color coded it purple, that meant the participant recounts or expresses an emotional reaction to a specific or chain of events. Role and functions, did they describe a job and the function of that job? Institutions and locations, did they reference another business? Did they reference another school? And where are these institutions or schools located? Action and impact, did they describe one or more tasks that resulted in a measurable outcome? Thinking process, how are they thinking about how they're moving through their service or how they actually do their jobs? Conflicts and inefficiencies, this is a very big one. You know, we all face roadblocks, and during your interviews, your participant will likely give you insights into a lot of roadblocks that they face, either, you know, on their journey into their occupation or while they're in their occupation. Platform and tools, you know, we want to understand what tools and platforms that our participants are using. It can go from web to mobile applications, different third-party apps, services like we just talked about, and then other relevant stakeholders and attributes. So other people that our participants mentioned. So using these color-coded categories, our fellows essentially extracted insights from their interviews, and this is known as predetermined codes, as in we provided our fellows with a predetermined set of codes, and then once they have their interview transcripts, they can just read through it and literally just transcribe it. So we have our highlighter tool, which is super handy in this point, and you know, it literally looks like this as like one of the first outcomes, and it's really great because again, it makes you feel like a kid again of just like highlighting things and like, oh, I just noticed that. And it's really cool. And we had a very cool live qualitative coding session where we basically had everyone pull their transcripts into Miro. Again, we broke it out by individual sticky notes. Why that's important, always break down your data into digestible chunks so that when you are transcribing or finding those insights, you can easily come back to it. You can reread it, understand the emotive context behind it, and then really get deeper insights and really flex these qualitative codes to their best ability. So this is what it looks like before. And then afterwards, you have a sheet that we actually send to our interviewees. So after we extracted insights from our interview transcripts, fellows compiled their coded sticky notes and sent them to participants. This is super important because you always want to allow your participants to verify the data that you've collected, and it really keeps our research transparent. Transparency is super big. And again, sticky notes are super great to collect insights quickly. Everyone uses sticky notes, come on. But if you really want to get even deeper insights, you want to create sticky notes with distinct tags so you can organize your data and identify patterns quickly. And with a few clicks, you can use the cluster tool to then cluster your sticky notes by tag. And if you've noticed, each of these sticky notes is actually individually tagged with our qualitative codes. So you have your purple ones, which stand for journey and timeline. You have your green ones, which stand for roles and functions. You have your yellow ones, which stand for institutions and locations, and so forth. Now, with one person doing that, that's amazing. You know, you've coded an interview and you have all of your codes. Beautiful. However, when you have 50 people doing that, now you're able to see all of that data laid out, and then you can actually just cluster it by code and really get into deeper insights. And this is one of the ways that we use to verify how interviewees actually confirmed our codes. We use Slack, and we have like a nice channel that people just respond to, which is super dope. So shout out to the fellows. They're really great participants. And yeah, they would verify it via Slack, and then that would mean, all right, we've verified this data. So this goes into the live session of what our actual organized notes look like using that cluster tool. So all of those data points, it looks small because it's, you know, zoomed out, but this is a lot of sticky notes. And we transferred that into our very own little pattern pit so we can actually start finding patterns. And we'll actually go over in a second to see how we actually separated that out. But creating these more specific groups really helped us determine pain points and gaps in our data for follow-up interviews and field studies. So here's actually a look at some of the data that we began finding, you know, using journey and timelines, institutions and locations, roles and functions, actions and impact. So Miro is super great because it allows you to break out your data into different points, involve your community, as in having stakeholders come in, verify this data, have your fellowship members extract, learn how to find patterns and pain points. And then it leads out to the completion of the thematic analysis, as in we're drafting our thematic analysis that we'll be sharing with our participants. And that will essentially highlight major themes that we've identified from journey timelines and reactions, i.e., if we notice many people had a similar path of becoming an urban planner, we're highlighting that in the thematic analysis. For institutions and locations, if we notice a certain group is integral in a lot of processes that people rely on, then we're going to actually highlight that in our thematic analysis to show their importance in a lot of these tasks and functions. If you have roles and functions, what is the majority group of people that we've interviewed, and what roles do they actually partake in, and why are their functions so critical? So it's really taking all of this data, finding those patterns, involving your fellowship members, involving your community and fellowship members, and involving your local governments by getting people in those meetings to either verify or de-verify this data with more in-depth contextual interviews, and keeping it on following up with more field studies. So this is essentially one of the main ways that we've been using Miro to jolt or jumpstart communication with local governments, and also just helping local community groups in the area, do their work even better and streamlining those workflows. I'm sure when you're either waking up or you're walking your dog in the morning, if you have a pet, etc. If you're walking around, on, light poles, etc., you'll see notifications. I'm saying notifications. You'll probably see a piece of paper just like stuck on to like join this community workshop meeting at this point X and Y. This gives you a direct incentive to actually want to go to those events and learn more about how people are interweaving their knowledge and pooling their knowledge to make sure that your street is well looked after, or making sure that businesses that are coming into your area are actually verified by the community, or making sure that from a talent pool standpoint, that you can actually flex your ideas and help with the processes, add that to your resume. And you may even generate a startup off of this based off of the gaps in data that you identify in your community. It goes back to that urban informatics, and this is one of the great ways where you can turn your city into a hub of creativity and innovation by really working with local governments to leverage that data, to really leverage what's out there, what's working, what isn't, and using your skill set, and of course incorporating Miro so that you create a shared platform to do all of that. So yeah, one of the best ways to form a habit is by making it easy, and Miro does just that. So if you'd actually like to start research in your neighborhood or interested in partnering up, I would really love to connect and learn more about the work that you're doing. So send all your inquiries to me at thebaronreview@gmail.com, or please reach out via LinkedIn. Again, my name is Terrell Barron, also thebaronreview.com. Would love to learn more. And yeah, I really appreciate that. And now we're going to open this on up for questions.
Oh, yeah. A reminder that if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A tab. And we'll make sure that we get them over to Terrell and he'll answer those live. In addition, in the last few minutes, please make sure you fill out our 1 question survey in the feedback tab. Promise it's very quick. And in the meantime, it looks like we're getting some questions coming in here.
Alrighty, I see Amanda question. I might have missed this for the I'm sure you didn't. You're on point. All right, for the tags and the stickies, first folks did the tagging work using the highlighter first, then you create the new stickies. Alrighty, great question. So we actually created all of the stickies that were in the board were already tagged with our qualitative codes. So essentially we had our data sets. So we had everyone, go out and do these interviews. And we took a fair shot in the beginning to look at all of these interviews. First, you always just reread your audio transcript, right? Second time you reread your transcript, you really want to understand the emotive context behind your participants' answers. Now, the third time that you reread your audio transcript, that's where you actually do your qualitative coding. And that were the predetermined codes that we wanted to, give out to our group. So look through the interview transcripts, created a set of predetermined codes, and from those predetermined codes, created a bunch of sticky notes, coded all of those sticky notes, and then presented those sticky notes to our fellowship members and just walked them through what these qualitative codes were, so that all they had to do was just transfer large highlighted chunks that they, color coded, and just put them on the sticky notes. So then we can just transfer those on over to our pattern pit, use that cluster tool that we talked about, and then it just breaks out your data for you. So, usually if you're working with a large group, it's usually best to start with predetermined codes, because if you have 50 people working on their own codes, you'll probably have 2 people who make the same code, or you'll be like, make it structured, make sure that you can identify insights very quickly, start with some predetermined codes, work from there, and then, it'll go from there. Hope that answered your question. I don't think I can answer that one, Lynn. That'd be great though, because I would definitely love some swag. Let me see if
there was one in the Q&A as well.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. Alrighty, so do you add any weight to the sticky notes before analyzing them in a pool, or do you just duplicate them? Great. I'm saying great. Can't even talk, I'm so excited. So great question. So in the pattern pit, essentially the weight of sticky notes is determined by how many we cluster by, theme. So for example, if we see 5 sticky notes for journey and timeline relating to I studied X in college for this amount of time, the weight of all of those stickies would combine to form a subgroup within that larger group of journey and timeline. So the weight of the stickies is kind of a visual way of seeing the weight of sticky notes by seeing how many are clustered. Like if you notice, there are like 15 purple tags by themselves over there, and there's only like a sporadic set of like 3 for here, 3 for here, then that's visual hierarchy of, all right, this group, it seems like a lot of our participants are chatting about that. So sticky notes are great when they're appropriately tagged, because it's a visual way to recognize hierarchy, and then it's already data proofed for you. So you can also just take that in. You can create like a small graph if you really want to present that in an easier way to show that the weight of your sticky notes. And you can also do that in Miro too, which is really great. You can make it a pie graph or a bar chart, but either way, you'd literally just count them all up, put it in that pie chart, and then you can see a weight distribution of sticky notes within a specific code, or you can look at it broadly and see the weight of sticky notes per section. And hopefully that answered your question as well.
Thanks, Terrell. I'm not sure. I think we caught everything in chat, but if not, please submit it in the Q&A. Is there anybody else that had a question? Well, we still have Terrell here. And thank you so much for sharing your very insightful presentation. Really cool work that you're doing. Okay, a lot of positive feedback here already. Thank you. I don't see any other. Oh, I see one more question that came into the Q&A.
Got you. Seb, what's up? What's up? Is there a specific part that is most challenging in this process? And what is a great question? Great question. So one of the most challenging roadblocks that we generally faced was when it came to reaching out to people to interview. Again, people have tight schedules. It's all based on time. And we actually provided our fellowship members, again, with scripts. So that goes into scripts for LinkedIn. So you can literally just copy and paste. And that was created off of trial and error, based off of my efforts of reaching out to different stakeholders for interviews and seeing what messages worked and what led to the fastest transaction points, as in, all right, one message led to this. The second message was sending a link to our Calendly so we can actually schedule it, et cetera. And then it was our interview time. So one of the main roadblocks was really participants reaching back out and, lining up an interview. And that was, again, handled with creating those scripts so that they could keep their language consistent. We can keep the data and we can keep our focal points consistent. So anytime we reached out to participants, everyone had the same mindset going into the interview. Again, we provided them with a privacy policy so they knew how we were using their data and why we're using their data. And again, that was really the most challenging part, because it took trial and error, as in participants would reach out and be like, hey, this isn't working, or this didn't work the best it could have. And that even goes into some of the third-party apps that we use for transcribing our interviews. Sometimes the transcriptions weren't as accurate, so we had to switch tools in certain times, and that's where participants was like, hey, we actually use this tool, and we noticed it would actually be a bit better. So it's listening and understanding the feedback that you're getting from your participants and your external stakeholders, and really just using that as a way forward, rather than just saying, all right, we're just going to stick to this and see where it goes. So that was really the most challenging part, because it requires a lot of transparency and communication. So as long as you're keeping that up with your teammates and your external stakeholders, then you can easily overcome those roadblocks. But structure and keeping those scripts available, and creating like facts, and creating different optimal channels so that you can quickly resolve something will do you wonders. Great question, Seth.
Thank you so much, Terrell. It looks like we're just about at time. So thank you everyone for attending today. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of Distributed, and thanks so much for sharing this with us today, Terrell.
Anytime. Thank you everyone for participating, and looking forward to hearing from you. Have a good one, everyone.
Take care.